because it's gonna go pee-pee.
Chances of making a mess, very high.
We ain't doing that.
And you might be asking yourself, how did I end up here with my most expensive, craziest build to date, taking it apart with the king hack, Bad Daddy Braddy? So we're gonna try a new type of episode today because this build predates my channel. So I realized that a lot of you guys probably didn't follow along from the Hoonigan days. So let me get you up to speed. And if you're already caught up, well, I put the chapters below so you can skip ahead, but it's story time. This build, well, the idea of this build started back in 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago at this point.
No muffler right now.
I was at Hoonigan, and our Project Cars channel was a big focus for us. I had also just finished my last big build, which was my most in-depth build I've done to date. It was a 1JZ 6-speed swapped S14 street drift car that made over 500 wheel horsepower. But I also had my E46 M3 that I purchased stock in 2017 and spent a couple years building it into the perfect canyon and track rat, which had done over 50 track days and countless canyon days. But I wanted more. I was over the dual purpose thing. I wanted a dedicated track car.
And it's fun, I like it. I just want to go to the track more.
So I came up with this bright idea to sell off the E46 and buy two cars. One would be a street/track canyon car that I could also daily drive, and the other would be a hardcore dedicated track car. So I parted out the E46 and sold it off and set out on a mission to find the first car, which I decided would be an E92 M3. And to my surprise, I always tell people you find the best deals in places that no one looks. I found this amazing example on OfferUp, a 42,000 mile stripper pack E92 M3 in Alpine White. It was almost too good to be true. And just to rub it in everyone's face on pre-pandemic prices, I paid just $25,000 for this car. I immediately began working on this to get it sorted. This was a simple build. Good dampers, sticky tires, good brakes, a set of Recaro seats, and of course an intake and exhaust. This was an absolutely amazing street car that was pretty potent on track as well. In 100% street trim, it was just as fast as my E46 M3 that had a stripped out interior and full aero package. Once that was sorted, I knew it was time to start moving on to the next phase of the project, which was finding the dedicated track car. I determined doing an E36 M3 because I loved the aesthetic. I knew they were cheap to find donor cars and they were light and had a ton of options in terms of finding aftermarket support for parts. So I found this 1995 BMW M3 automatic that hasn't ran in nearly a decade. I got this car for just $3,000, so it was an absolutely perfect donor car considering the S50, once running, is worth about $3,000. So it was a $0 shell, and if you ask me, that's a pretty damn good deal.
What?
Is it out of gas?
It's probably out of gas.
Today's sponsor is something I am super excited about, and it's Factor. I've been working on losing some weight recently. Found that what works for me is actually so simple: portion control and consistency. Factor makes meeting your nutritional goals super easy with their fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals delivered right to your doorstep. Factor is a go-to lunch or dinner solution that's perfect for my busy lifestyle. The biggest hurdle I have with eating healthy is the planning and shopping. Factor removes all that headache for me, which leaves me more time to do the things that I like to do and need to do. They have many nutritious options for keeping my fridge well stocked. Like smoothies and juices are perfect for easy snacking or quick on-the-go meals. But most importantly, it helps me with portion control. Treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleanup. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menus to help you manage your calories, maximize your protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use my code VIN50 to save 50% off your first box and 20% off your next box. That's code VIN50 at factor75.com for 50% off your first box and 20% off your second box while your subscription's active. Now let's get back to the episode. I didn't get to work on the M3 right away, so it sat around in the background for a bit. And then the global pandemic hit and everything shut down. And for most, this meant more free time, but not for me. Hoonigan was exploding with growth, and my job behind the scenes became even more demanding, leaving me with less time to work on my personal projects. I also bought my first house, which was a massive project, and I was determined to do most of the rehab work myself. So the race car project got pushed even further back on the list of priorities. But that was okay, because I had a perfect street and track car to enjoy for the time being. And it's about the time when my Carcane spiral really started to get out of control, because I picked up this super cheap 1980 Porsche 911 SC. It was a basket case that ended up having over 400,000 miles.
The king of buying and selling cars finally got scammed. I still love the car.
But it was a car I always wanted, and I was able to pick it up for cheap enough that it made sense. And I got to work building this car. But it was just kind of a bolt-on boy build. All suspension and chassis work, some aesthetic changes, and drove it along the way. Had a really good time with it. Same story, found an absolutely incredible deal on a 1991 Acura NSX, so I sold off the E92 M3 and picked up that car. Again, just another bolt-on boy build. Suspension, wheels, exhaust, and some maintenance and rehab items, and this car was absolutely amazing. Which made me realize this is how I've always enjoyed cars, since I was a kid. I built cars by modifying them and driving them along the way, and then using it nearly every day. It was never really about building a crazy project car that was down for years on end before having any enjoyment. So I bounced through a lot of really fun cars, which I'll save for another episode. But the E36 sort of just sat collecting dust. It was a dream that sort of faded away, and I kind of lost interest in it because I was having so much fun with all these street cars. Oh my God, so much better. Oh, this road is so bumpy. And as the pandemic ended, my life did not slow down, and Hoonigan was still crazy. Except my time spent after hours there became dreaded. The place felt pretty toxic to me, and after a long day of work, I just wanted to go home. But that all changed one day. The passing of our head Hoonigan in charge, the legend Ken Block.
I don't take life too serious, but at the end of the day, I try and inspire people to be creative and live a fun life. And don't be an asshole.
While most of the internet thinks that this was the death of Hoonigan, it wasn't. We were more unified and more excited than ever to make it work. We even decided we'd launch a race series in his honor, Gymkhana Grid. Suddenly, I was excited to get the car done. And it started to come together fast. And it wasn't just me, the whole team was building their cars. And then a few short months later, Hoonigan pulled the plug on the series and our headquarters. Gymkhana Grid was gone, Tire Slayer Studios was gone, a lot of motivation to finish these cars, kinda gone. So I had no purpose for this car, nowhere to work on it, and no one to help with it. But I wasn't ready to let this dream die. So I ordered up some Bimmerworld Aero, Stoptech brakes, and I had these BBS E88 sitting around. So like that, we were back on track to having the ultimate track car that I've wanted for years. I partnered with my friends at Race Cars Unlimited to have a space to work on the car and set a goal for myself to get this thing done for Grid Life at Laguna Seca in August. We thrashed to get the car done and had an amazing first test weekend with the car, which included a test day at Buttonwillow and 2 days at Laguna Seca without a single issue. I was blown away. This is what the internet wants you to believe having a project car is like. And while we didn't have any major issues, not to say that the car didn't need a lot of work, but it was all manageable stuff that I could address in the future. So the following month, I took the car out to a Hoonigan This Versus That episode, where on my first pass, the clutch failed and it locked me out of all the gears. But luckily, American Powertrain had my back and sent me their brand new twin disc, so that was just a couple hours worth of work to get this thing back in action. At this point, I knew the car needed a whole bunch of small fixins, and my buddy Chase over at Chase Bays had all the stuff to make it work. So he was generous enough to come out from Alabama to Southern California to help me install some parts and then dial it in on track. We thrashed on the car for 24 hours the day before heading up to Buttonwillow. The morning of, we get the car out on track for its first lap just to shake it down, and the car starts to misfire. We troubleshot all day, but couldn't figure it out. I felt horrible. I let down this entire team and wasted all their time and resources. And I had been already feeling pretty bummed out on this project. I no longer have the big shop, countless tools, and endless resources to do this project. And most importantly, the friends and people to be around while doing it. But we can't just leave this car for dead. We gotta figure it out. So let's get to the shop and get to the bottom of this situation.
No chance. Also not mine.
All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get to troubleshooting. And if you like catastrophic engine failures, this is gonna be a good one, so stick around till the end. So I had to get to the bottom of what this misfire was. And at the track, we deemed it to be a cam position sensor. It was the only thing that made sense. So I went out to the store, picked one up, and luckily, it was a pretty easy swap. It's literally one bolt and just snaking some hands down under there to actually get it in and out.
Don't move. Don't move a muscle. We're right there.
Unfortunately, that wasn't it. And because we couldn't really make sense of any of this and it didn't seem glaringly obvious, I figured I wanted to dive into the electrical. So then I had Rywire come over because he is the guru in wiring. And I figured if anyone could figure out if there's something going on with the harness, it would be him. So we dug through the wiring harness and picked everything apart. On top of doing the basic stuff like checking for spark, we even did a quick compression test by ear. He wasn't able to find anything wrong with the harness and we were kind of stumped. At the end of this, we deemed that it's probably injectors. The injectors are a couple years old. This motor was built for SEMA 2021 and it was tuned on E85 and then sat for a long time. Injectors go bad, especially with E85, which is super corrosive. Sometimes will gum up injectors to the point where they don't work. So we were like, okay, more than likely is an injector. So let's go get these injectors cleaned. I actually deemed just buying new Holley injectors was actually the cheaper and quicker route and guaranteed to work. So I swapped in some new injectors and unfortunately that did not solve the issue either, which always leads to heartbreak when you spend money on parts and they don't work.
Touch the front, like they're hot. But like you can still touch that rear. I have my hand on it.
I figured I'd reach out to my LS guy, and I called Zach, and he recommended me reaching out to this guy, Bucky, who helps with all his ECU tuning and general LS stuff. He came by, and I figured before he came by, I should at least do some of my due diligence, so I picked up some brand new spark plugs and a compression tester. Because when Rywire was here, we felt the compression with our fingers, and we were like, this seems good to go. But I was like, let me just see if maybe it's low on compression in one of the cylinders. So I pulled all the plugs, started doing a compression test. The rear cylinder on the passenger side, which I thought was gonna be problematic, was actually perfect, spot on. Did the rest of the cylinders on that side, all very good, reading 210 PSI, which is super strong. Then I get to the rear cylinder on the driver's side and 0. Absolutely no compression. So I reach out to Jacob from Smedding and he said, well, that's actually a really good sign because if it were low on compression, it could be a piston or something really wrong. But the fact that it has no compression means you probably bent a valve. So I pulled the valve covers off and sure enough, there it is. Push rod just sticking right out of the rocker. So something happened and the push rod actually jumped out and the valve spring is not decompressed. So the valve must be bent, not allowing the spring to completely decompress. There I am. I think my motor is completely trashed. So there's only one step left and it resorted in pulling the head off the motor. Called in for some backup.
It's gonna go pee-pee.
Chances of making a mess, very high.
Let's go down.
Actually pretty good. Craziest build to date, taking it apart with the King Hack Bad Daddy Braddy.
Hey, well, when you're on a budget, you're on a budget.
He knew I had LS problems. There's no better person to tear apart an LS with Brad. Because you've probably blown up like, what, 3,000-4,000 of these already?
I've actually done this exact damage that you've done.
How's it coming out so slow?
We have to open up the cap.
You want to drop it down?
What's good with you though, you know? Just hold that puppy up for a little while. This might have been the simplest head pull ever. Now I gotta pay Brad. I could have done this myself really easily. I'm just kidding. There was one thing I was dreading doing, and it was taking off this whole accessory drive, but actually the way it works, I forgot, is that it's all bolted to the block. So this comes off really nice. I mean, we've been working on this for what, 15 minutes?
Yeah, not very long. It took
15 minutes with putting the car on the lift. We're gonna unbolt the head, and then we'll see what's up. Do you think the piston's gonna be bad or what?
My bet is we're gonna have marks on the piston. I'm gonna guarantee we're gonna be able to get the head fixed, put it back on, and you're gonna be able to romp it. But I would like to see you keep it under 62 with hydraulic.
Well, Brad's thinking that what happens with these engines, if you're revving them high, they'll sometimes float the valve because of the lifter.
My prediction is we broke a valve spring under, well, what happened first was when we take the lifter off, there's these little like clips that hold the top of the lifter on. The clip decided to take a heyday. The lifter went wild, it broke the spring, and then the valve came down and probably touched the piston a few times. Now these are probably reliefed pistons because it's a high compression motor, so they're really high up there. We're gonna see some marks in the piston. We can take a Dremel, we can put tape all around the piston, clean that up so that there's no hard burrs in the piston, you know, just cleaning it, and then have this valve replaced and put it back together. Now my bigger thing is we're gonna have to put new lifters on this side all the way down. I would keep it under 6,200 RPM. Like you say, it makes too much power power anyways.
So this car's tuned to rev limiter 6,900 RPM. I mean, we'll see. Maybe we get lucky because we did notice that the spark plug didn't have metal on it. There's no metal in the oil. So we should be pretty lucky because there's two things that could happen. One of them is the piston makes contact with the valve and the valve head falls off, gets smashed around, destroys the whole engine. This valve spring is stuck down, which means that the valve is bent, the head is probably on it, and it's not allowing it to come all the way up. So maybe it just tapped the piston and moved the head over and we get lucky. So let's see. Let's take a look. What do we got here? Valve is still there, but it is bent.
Yeah, that's replaceable. Oh, you're fine.
Good, but bad. All right, well, let's take a look at this first. So we got a bent valve here. That's definitely toasted. Yes, the valve is bent, but I think the pro here is the head looks like it's fine. There's no marring on the head. The piston did hit the valve because it bent, but this thing looks nice. Like there's no really deep scratches in this or anything. It looks like it might have just tapped it a couple times and pushed it out of the way. So that looks fine. Like you could rub your finger over it and there's not even a groove.
You get more kiss marks on the first of the year than this. Dude, this is fine.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm honestly pretty excited about that because I think we can just throw a new valve in this thing and rock out.
But the bigger thing is we need to take these lifter trays out and we need to pull all these lifters because we got to figure out where the damage started. Like, did it start with a broken valve spring or did it start with a bad lifter? These are what's called, whatchamacallit lifters.
Those are trunnions?
Yeah, trunnion lifters. So they just come out like this, but again,
What are you looking at?
it's hard to see inside of here, but there's a little clip that holds that thing down and it's still in there. So that lifter is actually still good.
So what do you think happened?
You have a broken valve spring.
Let's take a look.
This valve spring probably collapsed and then it came down loosey-goosey and it bent the valve. When they take these valve springs out, they'll see, I mean, we could just take a socket and, yeah, we're gonna have to have a tool. Because it's so bent and pushed in there, we have to have a tool that pushes it down and gets that out.
Okay.
But it's machine shop time.
Well, hey, Brad, not too bad, dude. Light work.
Light work. I honestly think you're less than $300 in repairs.
I like the way that sounds. Now that I see it's a pretty easy fix, it's gonna cost me pretty much no money to fix, and it was really easy to do, I'm not that bummed, which is really a bizarre feeling after you had just taken apart your super expensive engine. But I know that every episode that I've done on this car so far has been a bummer, and I'm sorry about that. And trust me, I'm not having fun with it. So next time you guys see this car on the channel, we're gonna get this thing back together and then we're gonna go take it out and go ripping on this. I promise it'll be a positive episode next one, so stick around. Thanks to everyone who's been watching. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Definitely helps me out a ton. I appreciate all the love I get in the comments. It's honestly overwhelming. I try to respond to a lot of you guys down there so we could chop it up, but I appreciate the support. But for now, I'm out.